This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us at WZRD via Zoom, State Representative Kam Buckner, Illinois State Representative Kam Buckner of the 26th District. How are you today, Representative Buckner?
Well, Trudy, how are you?
Very, very well, thank you. Okay, first of all, for our WZRD listeners, could you tell us what areas the 26th district covers?
Yes, the 26th district is a district that is situated completely in the city of Chicago. Mm-hmm. I represent neighborhoods like South Chicago, South Shore, Washington Park, Greater Grand Crossing, Bronzeville, Hyde Park, Kenwood, the South Loop, downtown, River North, Streeterville, and the Gold Coast.
That's a lot of. Do you know offhand how much of Chicago that area covers? It covers so much. Is it like about a third of it, a quarter of Chicago? Do you know approximately how much all that real estate covers?
Yeah, it's not that much, not a third or a quarter, but so there's 110,000 people in the district, but the district does cover 10 aldermanic wards, and so while it is not as large as a third or a half of Chicago, it does have pieces and parts of, as I said, 10 aldermanic wards, which is about 20% of the city.
Mm-hmm. Right, that is still a lot of people. Okay, so let us talk a little bit about the HB3988 Missing and Murdered Chicago Women Act, which you helped enact and at the House level, and it went through the House level. Could you give us a synopsis about what that act is all about?
Yes, HB3988 is a piece of legislation that is extremely important to me. It's a piece of legislation that I filed a number of years ago, but unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the slowed down nature of the work that we do in Springfield because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to get any movement on it until recently. But it's something that is, as I said, very near and dear to my heart. When I initially filed this bill a couple of years ago, I did it with a deep sense of urgency and also a deep sense of frustration that has only intensified since then. The impetus for this was in May of 2019, the Chicago Tribune reported on the unsolved killings of 55 women in the Chicago area and the possible involvement of a serial killer. This was an issue in my mind that demanded justice, that demanded attention from all levels of government and all levels of law enforcement. And thank God, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, they worked with the Chicago Police Department to address some of the immediate issues. And Congressman Bobby Resch was a huge champion for this work. But we didn't get many answers. And it became evident that part of the reason that these crimes remained unsolved was due to a backlog in evidence processing. And frankly, because there were not enough people standing up for these women and these girls. And so I looked at some of the work that had been done on a federal level with Native American women and Indigenous women who have, in many portions and sectors of our country, suffered similar fates. And I, wanted to find a way to galvanize all those folks who should be stakeholders in it and who should be a part of this conversation. And so I'm extremely excited about this bill, extremely excited about the fact that we were able to get it through the House of Representatives this session, and looking forward to it getting the requisite amount of votes in the Senate in the coming days.
Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, during the pandemic, your work in the bill was slowed down, but the cases of women and girls being murdered in Chicago did not slow down at all, right?
It did not. Unfortunately, it upticked. And even as we sit here today, Trudy, we know that last week was a very unfortunately active week for missing and murdered women and girls in Chicago. We found the body early last week of Elise Mallory along Lake Michigan, in Lake Michigan. And then a few days later, Tatiana LaBelle was found in a alley, in a garbage can in the Chatham neighborhood. And then a couple days later, Aaliyah Newell was found with blunt force trauma as the cause of her death in her home in Inglewood. And so unfortunately, this has not slowed down, it's actually picked up. And we've got to give it the attention and the resources that it needs so we can not only bring justice to the families who have suffered this fate, but also make sure that this stops happening.
Yes, even in we work with the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce, and there were 3 cases, Elise Mallory being the last one, but there were 3. There's two other cases as well. There's Sheila Gibbs that went missing in November, and she hasn't been found. And there was another young lady that afterwards that we're still looking for too. So it's very unfortunate that there is so much of that. So was the House vote for HB 3988 unanimous?
It was a unanimous vote. I'm proud to say that it was a bipartisan vote and a bi-regional vote. And obviously what I mean by that is that we had both Republicans and Democrats who signed on as co-sponsors to get this across the finish line. And also we had folks who were not members of the Chicago caucus, right? We had members who were from downstate Illinois and East Central Illinois who really took to heart how important this was for us in our community, and they helped us get it across the finish line.
Did the downstate representatives talk with you? Do they have any of these problems as well? Maybe not to such an extent, but do they have the problem of missing and murdered women in their areas?
Yeah, the folks who I had in-depth conversations with basically said, listen, I could not imagine this happening in my community, which is why I want to be supportive of the fact that it's happening in yours, and you need resources behind it. And so, no, I think this is unfortunately a very Chicago and Chicagoland area centric issue that we're dealing with right now. Mm-hmm. And once again, I'm thankful for the support of my colleagues from across the state.
Absolutely. When you were working on HB 3988 in committee, what issues came up that needed to be addressed besides there being the backlog in evidence processing?
Well, so there are a few things, Trudy, that we're looking at and we're hoping to pull from the work that's going on here. We want to find out what the systemic issues are, what makes this possible. I tell folks all the time, there's a difference between safety and security, right? Security is the protection from harms, right? Like death, like murder. But safety is protection from the underlying factors that create a way for those harms to even exist in the first place, right? So whether that's things like misogyny or the things that make domestic violence possible, or the gender wage gap, there are a lot of things that are part of the broader conversation that we want to pull from this. And I think people are wrapping their arms around the fact that we have to have these uncomfortable conversations about, are we creating a society that makes this okay or makes this possible, and what we have to do to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Were you able to get any insight from researchers, such as from universities? Have there been any studies concerning these topics by, let's say, local researchers?
Not yet, and that's the problem, right? That's part of the problem, is that we've been too silent on this, and we've got enough institutions, we got enough brain power and people power to get to some answers on this, and we have not done that. And so hopefully the task force that is stood up by this legislation can start pushing us in that direction.
The Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority will provide the meeting space for this task force, which would be brought together by the governor, right? If as long as it'll be passed by the Senate.
Yeah. So I CJA, the Illinois Criminal Information Justice Authority. It's a lot to say, but yes, they will be a part of this. They will be the administrative function for this task force and for their work. And that office has done some tremendous work around the state and around the city recently, and they are headed up. It's a function of the executive branch, but they are headed up by the Lieutenant Governor's office, and I know Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton is extremely, passionate about us getting some resolution on these cases.
Mhm. So has more work been accomplished by the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority under Lieutenant Governor Stratton than previous lieutenant governors? Do you know?
Yeah, so I don't believe a seizure, we call it a seizure in kind of state parlance. I don't believe it existed before the Pritzker administration. And if it did, it wasn't a full-bodied, full-throated authority. But Governor Stratton Lieutenant Governor Stratton has really been a champion on making sure that our seizure can address the long-standing issues in our community when it comes to criminal justice, when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to the things that many of our friends and neighbors and family members face on a normal basis, right? So her violence prevention work in that space has been great. The executive director there is a young lady named Doris Adams, and they are really committed to the work.
Did you consult with the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority when you were working on HB 3988?
I did. I consulted with ICEJA. I consulted with the Illinois State Police. I consulted with the Illinois Sheriff's Association, with violence prevention groups, with domestic violence and victims' rights groups. And so this is an all hands on deck effort, because that's what these women and these girls deserve. And we spoke to everybody who's going to have a part to play in this.
When you spoke with the law enforcement entities about HB 3988, what did they contribute?
Listen, they believe that this is also an issue. This is an issue. They wanted to be helpful and wanted to find ways to bring to bear all of our resources to try to get to the bottom of this. And so we were speaking the same language from day one, which I think is extremely important when you do work like this. And so I'm grateful for their help.
Did they bring to you any of their frustrations? Because we know that the detectives do work hard, but there's probably aren't enough resources. But what were some of the frustrations that they brought to you concerning this issue?
I don't know if I have any specific frustrations that were voiced by them, but as I said, they were on the same page and in lockstep when it comes to the fact that we've got to do something, and we have to find a way to reassess what's going on.
Is there there isn't not enough funding being allocated to missing Chicago women and girls, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. The funds that are being allocated to on this issue, where do they derive from?
Well, it depends, right? So I know that there are funds that most likely come from the state police. There are funds that most likely come from Chicago Police Department. I know the FBI was doing some work on it at one point, but I think that those funds dried up. And so really there's no constant flow of energy and resources to this, which is part of the problem, which is why we're here in the first place.
Do you know a little bit more about those FBI funds? Exactly how were those funds to be used to address this problem, and how did they dry up? Was it just like a specific amount and it was all used up?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that worked on the federal level. I know Congressman Rush was very helpful in getting some movement on that, but I'm not sure the funding mechanism and how that worked.
What about Congressman Rush? Did he talk about any frustrations that he saw in trying to help resolve this problem?
Congressman Rush has been extremely vocal about this since day one, and I can't thank him enough for his voice at the federal level on this very important topic. And so, yeah, he's been very clear about his frustrations, very clear about the fact that we've got to get some movement on this ASAP, because we can't continue to watch this happen.
Exactly. So evidently, there aren't enough funds being allocated from the federal level to address this problem. So now we have to move to the state level, right?
I don't think it's going to be an either or. I hope that the work that we do on the state level can inform the federal government that we need their help on this. I hope that we're able to give the city of Chicago some help as well on how to combat it. But yeah, I don't think it has to be either or. I think this needs to be, once again, an all hands on deck effort.
And so as this task force progresses and as the recommendations come in, if any of those recommendations have to do with a federal level, who would you be working with? Our legislators, the House, the representatives and senators?
Yeah, our congressional delegation, which is obviously led by Senator Durbin, Senator Duckworth, and the members of Congress, including Congressman Davis, Congressman Rush, Congresswoman Kelly, Congressman Garcia, who all have portions of Chicago in their districts.
Have any of this congressional delegation spoken with you about this issue, except for Congressman Rush?
I've not spoken specifically with any of our members of Congress with this, but you know, I know where they are on this. I've heard them talk about it, and so we're all on the same page.
What about the families of the Chicago missing and murdered women? What are their main frustrations? There are many, of course, but what is the main frustration, would you say?
That there's been no answers, right? If this was your daughter, your mother, your sister, your friend, your cousin, you would want answers, and there have been no answers for far too many of these cases, and so that is the supreme frustration. Obviously, they wish their family members were still here, but with some answers, and the lack of answers are the largest frustration.
Have the families mentioned to you who is their go-to person to ask for answers? Do they go to the detective assigned to their case, or who? Let's say if the detective doesn't provide enough answers, then is their next step their representation, let's say at the local, state, and federal level?
Yeah, so listen, it's just like any other criminal case. They have a point of contact in the police department. They have a point of contact through the detectives, through the homicide division. And that's, once again, the point of contact is great, but if there's no answers to give, then it's all for naught.
And the percentage of cases that are solved is very, very low. Do you have any, off the top of your head, any?
I don't know, and I don't. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to guess on that. I don't have a big number on that.
Yes, actually, we try to follow the news, and it's very, very rare that we see that a case is solved. So, yes, it's a big problem. What about the medical examiners? We saw that they were also mentioned in HB3988. So they could help improve the situation as well. Is it on account of the autopsies, their identification of bodies, that if it were quicker than, or also maybe part of the the autopsies and the evidence gathering? How do the go ahead.
Yeah, the medical examiners have the information on how these people succumb to whatever it was that happened to them. They have that medical information and scientific technology to see if there are patterns and traits. And so once again, everybody who can add something to this conversation, we wanted them at the table, which is why we added the medical examiners.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the medical examiners, if they keep better records or notice patterns consistently, that would be, of course, a big help. So as of now, they aren't doing that yet, or are there already some patterns that they are bringing up?
Or there may be patterns, but here's the problem: we don't know. We don't know because we're not talking about this under one umbrella with all the stakeholders in the same room, which is part of why we want to move this legislation in the first place.
Right. So evidently, there's a need for a database too about medical examiner findings, right? Is that why you also brought them into mentioned in the bill? are we talking about Chicago women and girls of all races, or we are concentrating more on violence against Black Chicago women and girls because there are more of them. But what about those that are non-Black? Are they included as well?
Yeah, this is for anybody who has suffered that fate. But what we know to be true is that these women are largely African American,
Right.
and they're largely Latino as well, right? And so, anybody who falls in this category will be a part of the work of the task force. But we know that the numbers show us that this is largely a crime that has happened to Black and Latino women.
Right. And you said that you did some preliminary research about how this same problem was addressed concerning Native American women that were missing and murdered. So have those people that were working on helping resolve that, did they come up with any findings, or are they still working on the issue as well?
They're still working. This is happening in a lot of the southwestern states like Arizona and New Mexico, as well as in Alaska, where there's a large indigenous population who has really been under attack as well. So they're still working on their results, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they figure out as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about the prosecutors? Have they discussed with you about this problem of Chicago missing and murdered women and girls with you?
Yes, they have.
And what were their concerns? Mm-hmm. What were their concerns?
I believe they have the same concerns as everyone. They want to know what the answer is. They want to know where we went wrong, how we can fix it, and because they can't prosecute anybody if they don't have anyone to prosecute, right? And so hopefully we can figure something out with this task force.
So currently, there is no a database that combines such as patterns and evidence, like between the detectives and among the detectives and among the medical examiners, and yes, those are the two main ones, right?
Yes, that database does not exist, and hopefully the work of this task force can help us create that.
Mm-hmm. What about hospitals? Do they find maybe some Jane Does that they don't know who they are? Is there going to be some coverage on those as well, so that maybe there are some of the people, some of the missing women and girls that we're looking for? What is this?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, so I haven't heard kind of any of that, but this could be a problem, right? This could be something that happens, and maybe there's patterns that are going on in our local hospitals as well. Hopefully that will come to the forefront as well.
Mm-hmm. And we don't know, but maybe there are some that in mental health clinics as well. Maybe there are some people that are brought to the mental health clinics without knowing who they are. We don't know. Could that be looked into as well, even though it's not specified exactly in the bill?
Yes, and we're hoping that we'll have a chance to address all of these things through this. And so there is no this is inclusive, and it's going to hopefully grow. And whatever we need to do to get to an answer, we're going to do it.
And what about our listening public? Because many of them might be actually the families of these missing women and girls, and they're the closest and are most familiar with the what needs to be addressed. How would they be able to contact this task force, or even you, when and hopefully this task force is formed, and with their concerns?
As soon as the governor signs this bill, we are going to begin to try to bring all the folks to the table who are going to be a part of the task force, and even those who won't be members of the task force, but who can be helpful and can add some context and some information, some insight. And so, we will be circling back to the public about how to engage with this task force. Their meetings will be open to the public, and so we don't I don't have the information yet on what that looks like, but we're working on it. As soon as we get this passed, we will be able to work on that.
And what about the members on the task force? Do you know about how many there will be? And then which areas of the population will they be coming from? Will there be some law enforcement, some prosecutors, etc.? Do you know their approximate designations?
It's a wide scope, and we did this on purpose to make sure that we were bringing in everybody once again who could be helpful in this conversation. So there will be members of the law enforcement community, so folks from police chiefs, the police superintendents. There will be members of the state's attorneys associations from around, from Cook County and our collar counties. There will be, as we said, medical examiner designees. There will be folks from the General Assembly, both from the House and the Senate. There'll be folks from victim advocates groups and community justice groups, as well as family members of victims. So we're going to have a big tent, and there'll be a lot of folks who can bring very nuanced help to the table, and that's what I'm excited about.
Mm-hmm. And we did notice that there will be bringing a report annually to the governor. So right now there's no kill date on this task force. Once it's formed, then it will keep on investigating and working on this problem until the problem is somewhat resolved, right?
Yeah, well, the report will be due after, I believe, a year to the governor and the General Assembly, but the task force will remain active after the report is issued, and there may be more asked of them after their first report is due.
All right. For WZRD Chicago, being a non-profit radio station, must be responsible to the community we serve. WZRD is mandated to file quarterly issues with the FCC on non-entertainment community-focused programming, and we like to assess the community for these quarterly issue topics with 3 questions. First, what is most important to you? It doesn't have to be about HB3988, but if it is, that's okay as well. What is most important to you? State Representative Kam Buckner.
Pardon me, you broke up a little bit on my end. Did you ask me a question?
Oh, yes, absolutely. WZRD Chicago, being a nonprofit radio station, must be responsible to the community we serve. WZRD is mandated to file quarterly issues with the FCC on non-entertainment community-focused programming. We like to assess the community for these quarterly issue topics with 3 questions. First, what is most important to you? It doesn't have to be concerning HB3988, but if it is, that's okay too. What is most important to you? State Representative Kam Buckner.
I think the thing that's most important to me is the people of Chicago, the people of Illinois having a voice and knowing that there are people who represent them in the General Assembly and City Hall in the county who really can mirror the things that are important to them and meet those moments with the energy and space and dollars and, once again, resources that are required of us.
Second, what long-term problem must we address?
Well, there are a lot of long-term problems that we have to address. I don't know if there's one in particular, but I think one of the biggest ones is apathy, right? We got to find a way to care about each other, to care about the issues, and to bring them all to bear.
Yes, we kind of talk a lot about the voter apathy. It's so hard for so many of us to actually be able to vote now. And then when people have been registered, myself, I am a election judge, and we see that the voter turnout is always so dismally low.
Yes.
Do you have any ideas about how to address this apathy? If I could pick your brain a little bit.
That's a a deep conversation and a deep problem that we got to find as many ways as possible to get to. I'll say that it starts young. So we got to start our young people off, with some understanding of how important it is to vote and to be a part of the process.
Okay, finally, what problem must be resolved now?
That's a tough one. There are a lot of things that require our immediate attention, but I will go back to the last two things I said. Listen, it's about equipping our young people with the ability to be a part of the solution and to feel as if they are they're heard, and encourage them to be engaged and involved and energized, because that's the way that we secure our democracy and our freedom and our liberties for the next generation.
So you are a public servant. So did somebody encourage you to serve and to be a voice for the people? How did your public service come about?
My parents really are the inspiration for me. My mother was a teacher here in Chicago. My dad was a law enforcement officer, and their commitment to their communities and their neighborhoods and the people who they worked for really is what drove me to occupy this space.
Are you the first elected official in the family?
No, I'm not. I'm the first elected official in Chicago in my family. I've got some folks, some family down in Mississippi. I've got a cousin who was the mayor of the city that my grandparents were born in.
And oh, nice. And that was before you were elected to serve as Illinois State Representative.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we hope that State Representative Kam Buckner, you continue to inspire young people to follow in your footsteps and be a voice for our community. Thank you so much for joining us on WZRD today. And we hope that HB 3988 passes in the Senate, and when the task force is formed, we hope to have you on again to talk about this further.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Be safe.